to our council meeting this afternoon. I'm just going to introduce the council, the folks who are here in the room, council and staff. We have Councillor Janice Bray. I'm Mayor George Comrie. We have Councillor Joe Lamb and Councillor Scott Nash. And we have our CAO clerk, Michelle Henry, our treasurer, Manish Kulal, and our planning assistant, Paula McCree. So that's who is present in the room, and welcome to those of you who are online. We also have Councillor Woods online today, so the whole council is here, but Councillor Woods is online on Zoom. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll start as usual with the playing of our national anthem. The municipality of Whitestone recognizes all of Canada resides on traditional, unceded and/or treaty lands of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We recognize our municipality on the Robinson Huron Treaty Territory is home to many past, present, and future Indigenous families. This acknowledgement of the land is a declaration of our commitment and collective responsibility to reconcile the past and to honor and value the culture, history, and relationships we have with one another. I'll now ask if any councillor has a pecuniary interest to declare in this afternoon's proceedings. Councillor Bray.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have a pecuniary interest for number 12.1.
Which is, all right. I see, okay.
Legion Branch 394 request.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's recorded. Now we need a motion then to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Bray, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Any discussion? Okay, I'll ask our clerk to call the question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Next, we have presentations and delegations, and we have one today. Presentation by our auditors, Payable and Associates Professional Chartered Accountants. We're going to present our consolidated financial statements and their opinions on them. And we have with us, we have Rebecca McDonald from the firm who is going to do that today. So, Rebecca, the floor is yours. Has she got slides, Madam CIO?
Do you want me
Okay.
to share my screen just to show the financial statements?
We've got them here.
Does that work?
Yes, we have them here in our package today.
Do you want me to share them or do you have them in front of you?
Okay, just one moment, Rebecca, and I'll share screen.
Thank you.
Okay, you should have access now.
You see them there?
Yes, thank you.
So I'm going to start on page 3, which is our audit report. So the first paragraph is our opinion. So we have audited the consolidated financial statements of the corporation of the municipality of Whitestone, which comprise the consolidated statement of financial position as at December 31st, 2022, and the consolidated statements of operations, the consolidated change in its net financial assets, and consolidated cash flows for the year then ended, and notes to these consolidated financial statements. They are consolidated because they include the cemetery and the library boards. So in our opinion, the accompanying statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the corporation of the municipality of Whitestone as at December 31st, 2022, and the results of its operations and cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So this is a clean audit opinion. There is nothing that's come to our attention that makes us believe that these are materially misstated. So we conducted our audit in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the consolidated financial statements in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards and for such internal control as they determine is necessary. Management's responsible for assessing the municipality's ability to continue as the going concern, and those charged with governance are responsible for overseeing the municipality's financial reporting process. So our objectives are to obtain reasonable assurance about whether these consolidated financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and to issue an auditor's report that includes our opinion. And that is our audit report right there. So again, there's no issues noted. And then just this last paragraph of the audit report just says we communicate with those charged with governance, the plan, scope, timing of the audit, and any significant audit findings. So again, clean audit report, and there was no issues noted during the audit. So this is a statement of financial position, otherwise known as a balance sheet. It is what the municipality owns and what is owed. So at the end of the year, just kind of going to go over just some of the major changes. So accounts receivable is up about 512,000 over the year before. That's due to 287,000 of grants. So the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund and the Canada Infrastructure Program for the nurse practitioner clinic. This is primarily the increase in that one. The accounts payable is up about 110,000 over the prior year. It's just primarily due to the timing of the trade payables and what was owing at year end. The next line down is the deferred revenue, and there's a note 5 that goes with that. So this note here is the composition of what is in deferred revenue. So you can see it's parkland, the gas tax revenues, and there's a little bit of other that at the beginning of the year, there was some nursing station donations in there. And then it shows the contributions received as well as the amount taken into revenue, which leaves you the balance at the end of year of 189,000, which is the parkland funds, and a little bit that 1,400 is for the library. back up to the statement of financial position. So below that is the municipal debt. So it's up to 2.4 million, an increase of about $1 million over the year before. And that is note 6. And again, this shows the composition of the debt for the municipality. So those last 3 items are the new debt for 2022. And then the remaining difference is the principal payments that were paid during the year.
Rebecca,
Yeah.
through you, Mr. Mayor, this is Councillor Lamb. Could you explain those 3? Because that's like $1 million of debt. What exactly they are? Because all we have is the numbers, right? Not the programs.
Yeah,
And
I don't.
also, the last 2 say that they're due in 2027. And that doesn't, we usually take out more than 4 years or 5 years, so. That seems a little inconsistent. Sorry, if you want me to wait till you're done, to ask this is fine too. So.
Yeah, I don't have what they're exactly for in front of me. I can go and look after.
Well, maybe when you're done, Manish can answer that. I don't know whether you can look up on page 11, the last 3. Or we can wait. It doesn't matter, Mr. Mayor, whatever you want. I just.
Well, let's proceed for now and then we'll get to questions.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's fine.
Okay, so back to the statement of financial position. So the landfill closure and the post-closure liability. This is the landfill closure and note 9. So this is based on engineer studies that are done every 3 years based on the capacity of the landfill, the fill rates, and the usage. The estimated expenditures are recorded there, the liability reported, and the number of years remaining on the landfill lives. Again, these are based on the studies that are done every 3 years. The last one was done in 2022. So the next item on the statement of financial position is the tangible capital assets. So we have a schedule. I don't know how well you can see that. So we had total additions during the year of $2.2 million and total amortization for the year of $800,000. So the additions of the 2.2 million include the purchase of Church Street land. There was an office reno. There was some big equipment. There was a backhoe and a pickup truck. And then there was some road work done, Canning Road, Farley's Road, Maple Island, and Whitestone Lake. And the nursing station is included in that work in process. So then just the last 2 items on that are the inventories of supplies, which are primarily your sand and gravel, and then the prepaid expenses, which is primarily prepaid insurance. The next schedule is your consolidated statement of operations, otherwise known as your income statement. So this just shows your revenues and expense by categories. So the total revenues for 2022 was about 5.8 million. It was up about 900,000 over the year before, which is due to the government transfer amount. 549,000 was an increase in that. So that's your Northern Ontario Heritage Fund, the Canada Infrastructure Program, so the roads, the nursing station. The other amount has increased about 330,000, which is nursing station. There was donations and contributions, which is the primary increase in that figure. Then total expenses of 5.2 million, so an increase of about 365,000 over 2021, which is 117,000 of general government. That's primarily salaries and wages in that line. There was 117,000 increase in transportation, which is because of all the road additions, there's an increase in amortization of about 63,000. And then there was additional summer maintenance that had been included in that line. And then an increase of about 122,000 in recreation and culture, which is about 28,000 increase in wages, and the balance is other repairs and maintenance that were not capital. So that leaves you with an annual surplus of 567,000 for the year. And when you add that to your opening accumulated surplus, you end up with an ending accumulated surplus of just over 9.8 million. So then this schedule is the change in the net financial assets or debt. This is just a continuity of the change. Not going to touch on that too much. And then this is the statement of cash flows, which is your continuity of the change in your cash balance and where your actual cash flow went. And then the next 2 pages are your accounting policies. We review these as part of the audit for consistency and relevance to the municipality. There was no change in the policies from 2021. And then the balance of the pages are some notes with just a little more additional detail for the statement of financial position. The only other note I was going to touch on is the commitment note. This is note number 8. That this is new this year. It just mentions the commitment towards the West Prairie Sound Recreation and Cultural Center Board. Other than the debt question, is there anything else?
This is Counselor Nash. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep.
Wait, hello? Can you hear me all right?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. Sorry about that. I guess I had a couple questions. When I was quickly going through it and when you were speaking there as well. From what I see, just trying to turn to the right page here. If I'm correct, we've shown on page 4 of your report, the consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus. You noted that our deficit or surplus was 565,000. I know that's more of an accounting surplus. And maybe Manish might be able to answer this if you're not able to. I thought we were running with about $100,000 surplus. So did that change after the auditor's report, or is this just more an accounting number?
Through you, Mayor. The operating surplus is around $10,900. This is the accumulated surplus of including a final with everything. It's $567,666. And I want to answer for a question for Joe Lamb.
Yeah, just let me get back to that page.
Yeah. So
What
the last one
what
is
page
for
was it again? Sorry,
in the page 11.
page 11 of the report
Correct.
or 11 of the,
21 of the report and page 11 of
sorry,
page 21 of report.
municipal debt was note 6. So that's what yeah. Let me get to note 6, sorry.
The last amount for
Just hold
684,000.
on, Manish, for a second, please. Till I can get there. There it is. Yeah, I've got page 11. Yeah, the last 3.
Yeah, the last 684,000 is the land purchase. That is for 5 years.
Okay, so
And-
that's the what I call the twist, right?
Yeah,
Okay. thank
that
you.
is amortization 15 years. So after 5 years, we had to refinance that again.
Oh, it's a 5-year term. Okay.
5-year
okay.
term is amortization
But
15
it's
years.
15 years in total. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And for 177,000 is for the backhoe. And
Backhoe,
through-
okay.
backhoe purchased last year.
Okay.
And 301,000 is a debenture for Whitestone and Bunny Trail and Walkview Trail projects.
The what project?
Whitestone, Bunny Trail.
Oh,
Whitestone.
Bunny Trail.
Yeah.
Okay. Bunny Trail, okay.
Thank you.
Now, are all through you, Mr. Mayor? So the backhoe is also, I take it, 15 years that comes up in 2027, right? For renewal.
That is a 5 year, backhoe is 5 year. That will be,
That's only 5 years.
Correct.
Okay, so the last one is, okay, and the 301,000 for the bunny trail, that comes up in 2032. Is that like 10 years?
correct.
Nothing after that?
No.
So 10, 5, and 15. Okay, thank you. I have a couple more. They're just general questions, Rebecca. Let me get to them here. It's Counselor Lamb. Generally speaking, I mean, you guys do a lot of municipalities. How would you say that for a small community like ours, what's our financial overall condition compared to other municipalities our size?
We
Yeah.
look at a few things. It depends how much you determine is, what's needed for reserves is going to fluctuate based on every single municipality. We look at your net financial assets or the net debt, which is page 5, the statement of financial position. So this net financial asset or net debt is how much you have in cash and receivables to pay your payables and your loans as they come due. Generally, it should be a positive figure, but there is, like, that includes your loans of $2.4 million that, like you say, some are over 30 years. So it's not a perfect science. And reserves are generally what you determine, based on your roads need studies, based on your capital asset plans of how much you need in the future, based on, what council determines is relevant. I don't know,
Okay,
that
so-
probably doesn't answer your question.
So, yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we're not in bad shape, I don't think, right? You're not alarming us with anything.
No.
I would think we're in okay shape as a municipality. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, all municipalities, part of it is we look at the going concern too, right? Is something going to happen that causes a business to crash? Well, municipalities are one of the safer ones because your funding does come from, federal, provincial. There's user fees, it comes from a wide range of sources. So it's not, they're almost guaranteed existence is what they are.
Yeah, my second question is, we have debt of, I guess, 2.4 million. That's up $1 million. There is a debt ceiling that we have. I know it's a formula, but where do we sit now compared to what the maximum is that we can borrow?
Through you, Mayor, can I answer this question?
Yeah.
So right now we are in a 10.15%, which is well below. So we can go up to 25% of ARL limit. Right now is 10.15,
So we're roughly 40% of,
no, 10%,
you said 10%, but we can go up to 25%, right?
correct.
So 10 of 25. is-
Another 15% we can go up in the debt.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying, what I was trying to say is we're 40% of what we could go to. 10 divided.
It's
by 20.
only the interest and principal amount payment. When you make a payment amount for the loan, it's not a loan full payment.
My point is, and again, this year on council, we intentionally did not want to borrow it, whatever, 6 or 7% versus a lot of this borrowing in the past has been at 2 and 3%. But we're not near our ceiling is my point, right? We're at 10%.
Correct,
And we could go to 25. So we've got lots of room left if we wanted to.
correct. You
If
have
interest rates came down and we wanted to spend.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
know. And the last one that I'll finish is to Rebecca. Is there anything in these financial statements that are unusual or a particular note or something that we should be aware of? I read them. I didn't see anything in here, but am I missing something? Is there
No,
something?
they're pretty standard notes. The one about the West Prairie Sound Recreation Cultural Center was just, for the future that you guys have said that these funds will be set aside and, there will be, could be continual funding for up to 10 years. So other than that, there's nothing that sticks out as unusual, and that even that is almost a standard commitment note of funds that will be set aside in the future.
But the 250,000, for instance, is not in, you haven't got a line that says 250,000 for the recreation center, do you?
No, that's July. It's just in the note. So we're just
That's a
disclosing
commitment
that.
for the future, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of my questions.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Nash?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I had just following up to Councillor Lamb's question there. Manish, maybe you'd be able to assist me. When we were talking about I'm rounding, but 10%, and we can go up to 25%. That's 25% of what number? I just want to make sure I understand it correct. Is that of our total revenue or of our budget?
It is an ARL limit set by for the annual overall revenue. On that of 25%, we can borrow the loan. That is, we are in a 10% right now, 10.15.
Yeah, so what would our revenue number be that we're using the 25% of?
I don't have that right now, but I can give that number you later. I didn't brought that paperwork with me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And I guess from what I see, I'm just, excuse me, looking at page 5. What I see is our debt for the year, or overall financial assets debt has gone from about 640,000 to I'm rounding, but to 1.575 million. So almost we increased our debt last year by 940,000, if I'm correct, right?
Sorry, I got the paper I have and I can answer the question which you asked me before. I got
Sure.
that. So our net revenue of our ARL is 3,905,042. So 25% of the revenue is 976,261. That is the ARL limit we can go yearly basis.
Yeah, so if I understand that correct, that's on a yearly basis, but I
Correct.
think the question for Councillor Lamb was overall, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this year, if we wanted, we could have borrowed almost $1 million,
Correct.
but I think what Councillor Lamb was asking, if I understood it correct, is where could we borrow to the maximum as a municipality, not on the year, but right now we've borrowed, I think it's 2 million in debt. How far can that number go? Is that correct, Councillor Lamb?
Well, I understand it's based on the payments that you have versus the amount.
Correct, the only the payment, not
It's the actual payments, right? So,
per year, how much we pay that is the 10% we are right now. It's not 100% of loan we are paying current year. There's an installment what we are paying, that is considered as the ARL limit for us.
Okay, I understand that. And the last question I had, it's to do with note number 9 with the landfills. And I know the last report we had was 2022. And I can see, there's numbers in your reports for closure costs and monitoring costs going forward. And it just, when I see it in your financial report, it kind of jumps out at me. When our timeline's 4 to 7 years for the Dunchurch landfill, that I know as council, as a municipality, we're going to have a very large task ahead of us in the next few years of figuring out what we're going to do when that landfill does come to capacity. We're going to have dealt with that long before it's come to capacity and put the funds away for that item. So I appreciate that there's a long note on that. It kind of just brings it out in the open a bit better for me. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on the report for Rebecca or for our treasurer? Councillor Woods?
No, I'm okay, Mr. Mayor. Thanks very much.
All right, well, thank you very much. Thanks, Rebecca, for spending this time with us and providing your report, and we'll I guess we'll move on and you can be excused if you,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, a matter arising would be a motion that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby accept the draft 2022 consolidated financial statements as presented on August 1st, 2023 by Payapol and Associates Professional Chartered Accountants. Mover and seconder, please.
I can move that, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Woods.
Okay, Councillor Woods and Councillor Lamb is seconding. Once again, we'll call the roll for the vote.
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Counselor Nash, Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
that motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So the next item that we have then is a couple of planning matters. And so we'll move into committee of the whole. If I can get a mover and seconder, please, or we consider these two items. Councillor Bray moves, Councillor Nash seconds.
Thank you, Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb.
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes,
that motion carries 437.
37. Thank you. So the first item that we have here is a presentation from our planner, John Jackson, on a lake planning, the Lakeshore Development Model 1975, the so-called Dillon model. And I have it here on my screen, so I'm going to share. Oh, okay, all right. Clerk is going to allow me to share the presentation. So where is? Guess I need to minimize it so I can see the controls here. Share screen, thank you. There it is. Can everybody see that presentation? Everyone who has a screen.
We have it
Yep.
here.
Yeah, the folks in the room here have it in the binder, but I think that we're good to go. So John, if you'd like to take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Comrie. Just by way of a little staff background, Michelle, Paula, and myself know that the municipality is moving forward sooner than later with an updated official plan, which will have lake policies as an integral component of that. And it was thought that it might be helpful as I kind of ride off into the sunset to give council the kind of, I suppose, outline of what they could be expecting in terms of that exercise. So I thought I'd go back to the origins of how lakeshore planning emerged in the province, and that actually started probably in the late 60s, early 70s, where there were development pressures brought forward to our recreational lakes along the shoreline for new cottage activity. And much of that related to the emergence of the post-war boomers, combination of the automobile improvements, transportation, new new highway improvements, as well as more leisure time by individuals, so that instead of working 6 days a week, they were getting weekends and that sort of thing that gave them the kind of opportunity to spend time in cottage country. Well, along with that wave of development pressure, there became concerns that the values or the qualities that existed around our shorelines might deteriorate to the point where those values or attractions would lose their sizzle and cause problems, so that there was a need to in fact come up with a model to ensure the maintenance of lakeshore qualities as far as our recreational water bodies were concerned. The province recognized this, and it, in combination with a number of sister ministries, decided to build this lakeshore capacity model. And it was headed up by a fellow named Peter Dillon, and it was often referred to as the Dillon model. So if you could flip, Georgia, if you're in command, I'll get you to flip to the next slide. In the early days, there was a belief that you could create a model that looked at a number of systems, and it tended to be included things like wildlife, forestry, a number of parameters, but ultimately it got too complex. And so they came up with a streamlined model where the model would be able to predict what the shoreline development would do to water quality. And interestingly enough, that water quality was more aesthetic than you would otherwise think. So if you go to the next slide, just describe that water quality was not about toxins or certain kinds of waste inputs that were not desirable, but more the recreational quality was directly related to things like the preservation of the clarity of the water, having it weed free, having it smell good, look good, feel good when you swam in it. So it was about aesthetics, not to say that there are other forms of pollution, but for the purposes of development, it was more about keeping the lakes as clean and clear and as attractive as possible. And so the system, quickly on the next slide, it made assumptions about how that impact might occur, and that primary assumption was that nutrients related to development would ultimately get to a lake, and when those nutrients would enter a water body, they acted like a fertilizer. And so the cycle of that fertilization caused additional vegetation growth, which growth cycled then on to die and then deplete things like oxygen, so that there was this extreme deteriorating factor that related from having too much fertilizer or nutrients in a lake. And interesting, the model took the position that 100% of the fertilizer, which was deemed to be phosphorus that occurs in septic wastewater, would ultimately migrate to the lake. And with that knowledge, they were able to determine what a new unit of development would do to the concentration level of fertilizers, which would have this cycle of deterioration. And the model had a whole pile of constantly changing assumptions, but even today, for example, they use the notion that anything that is within 300 meters of a water body is assumed to be an impact property in terms of having this load of additional fertilizers occurring into a lake. And the model was constantly being tweaked, but that was the premise of it, so that they could actually calculate based on this number of assumed fertilizer production could cause the aesthetic qualities of a lake to deteriorate. And this was called, this was related to a eutrophication system that the model designed. And what it decided was that the lakes with certain levels or concentrations of existing nutrients were to be put in a number of levels. And level 1 was an oligotrophic lake, which had anywhere up to 9.9 micrograms of phosphorus per liter. Level 2, mesotrophic, which was essentially a middle level, which was from 10 micrograms per liter to 18.5. Level 3 was eutrophic, which was the more, I'm going to call them aged lakes that had high concentrations of phosphorus in them, over 18.6. And then there was a level 4, which is virtually almost sort of a thick aquatic blanket on it. So oligotrophic was a lake trout lake. Mesotrophic is our warm water fisheries, more common type lake that exists in the municipalities, and also in Whitestone as well. Most of our lakes are mesotrophic, and eutrophic those are kind of in the poorer sort of spectrum of water quality. Oligotrophic lakes include one of the basins in Wawashkesh, Lorimer, Fairholme. All other lakes generally fall within the mesotrophic, like Whitestone would be mesotrophic. Actually, Limestone Lake is also oligotrophic. So the next slide talks about the application of the Dillon model. And it was used very, very extensively for about 20 years. It was when the province and its agency had a more hands-on resource function to municipalities. I would call, for example, if we had a development on, let's say, Limestone Lake, I would get a hold of the MOE and say, I need to know what the residual capacity for Limestone Lake would be. And they would say, well, we have data on the existing concentration, because that was one of the factors they needed to know to determine what additional impacts would occur from adding new lots that would add new septic systems on the water quality. If there was no existing data, which was critical to determining how much additional concentration could be allowed, they would have to wait to collect that data. And for those who are in the sort of the lake environmental business, know that the only time they can collect that data is early in the spring after ice out for a period of 2 to 3 weeks, when the lakes are referred to as flipping, so that the column of water is uniform between the surface and the bottom, so that they get an accurate reflection of the concentration of existing phosphorus. And these were the days when MOE, M&R would be hands-on. So every particular proposal would be screened through this Dillon model process. And it happened very quickly, and it happened almost within 24 hours if they had existing data. So what I thought might be helpful, if we go to the next slide, way the model worked was that it would allow for a lake to allegedly deteriorate to the next level without going into that next level. So if you were a lagotrophic, for example, you could add additional development so long as that added phosphorus wouldn't penetrate the next level down. So an oligotrophic level could assume additional development down to 9.9 micrograms per liter, but not to 10, which would put it from oligotrophic to mesotrophic, and the same at the mesotrophic level. So it would allow development to go from whatever the concentration was over 10 down to 18.5, but it wouldn't allow it to go into eutrophic, which was over 18.5. And that was how the capacity worked. They did have some precautionary measures for lake trout lakes, which erred on the side of caution by assuming that they would only allow for 25% of that anticipated capacity. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that this next slide is a fairly technical looking document, but a Dillon model run, which was sort of the early computer type tools that were used, would calculate its capability of handling additional phosphorus concentration without going over, based on things like the size, the surface area, its depth, its existing level of development, etc. So that if you look at the first row under measured spring phosphorus, so this is the measured spring phosphorus of the South Basin of Wawashkesh, and it is 8.88 micrograms per liter of phosphorus. So it would be allowed to go to 9.9. Now, if you go to the next slide, it works in conjunction with that first slide, which was more existing data. So in the middle of this slide, for example, the measured phosphorus is shown as 8.8. And they also used a theoretical, which was based on things like existing inputs, existing development, and existing projections of the kind of concentrations they were in. So the scientists would look at the 9.1, which was the theoretical limit, slightly over 8.8, but they would call that a good fit. And they would be very happy with the model in terms of this part of Wawashkesh. So for example, the number of additional cottages that could occur was based on user days. It's about 1 to 4 for year-round homes. So you could have an additional 349 cottages when Dillon's model was run on that lake. But what they typically would do is say, because it's a lake trout quality lake, they would only allow for a quarter of that residual, so roughly about 75 or 80 additional cottages. Now, just by comparison, I had the Dillon model output on the next slide for the North Basin. And the North Basin is a mesotrophic or middle lake because its concentration is over 10. Although I think, if I understand talking to some fisher people, that it is actually, I think it sustains lake trouts as well in the north as well as the south. But what the North Basin would do, because it's level 2 and it's a high level 2, it will probably produce a greater residual because it has a lot longer slide until it would go into the eutrophic level. So if we go to the next page, for example, you will see that there's the second last set of data on this output shows that you could have over 2,000 additional cottages before you would recognize any noticeable deterioration of the water quality of the North Basin. And you can see again, it would allow for 442 additional full-time residents and about 4 times that for cottages. So that's how the Dillon model worked. And it was so definitive that no one swayed from it, whether it was the province or whether it was municipalities or whether it was planners. Everyone took it as the gospel. And as the model became used more and more frequently, it became more and more noticeable that the restrictions were quite severe. And so there was some questioning. On the next slide, just to introduce sort of the new challenges behind the science for the Dillon model. And we started to become under fire by a number of other scientists. There weren't a lot of empirical data that would back up the Dillon model, and it became more and more restrictive, particularly around lake trout quality lakes or the oligotrophic lakes, because many lakes, it became known that they were essentially frozen because the Dillon model approach was very protective of those lakes, and we all know why. So in the next slide, you'll start to see after this deterioration, there came to be a number of suspected assumption or criteria of the Dillon model. And so a number of agencies, a number of universities, and also other scientists started to question those models, and they started to do analytical tests and challenge those assumptions, such as the assumption that every ounce of phosphorus that was found in septic tanks would ultimately find their way to the surface waters of the adjacent water body. And what they found, curiously enough, was that the expected plume of phosphorus on the Canadian Shield, where there's heavily mineralized soils with an acidic condition, in fact, did not get to the lake. In fact, that it bound right under the actual tile bed, so that this whole foundation of the Dillon model on the or on the Canadian Shield was in fact not taking place. There were probably, I'm going to say, 25 or 30 studies done throughout the Shield. One of the most well-known was done by a fellow named Will Robertson out of Guelph. And they used systems, some of which were in our area, where it was shown that none of this phosphorus made its way, in fact, to the adjoining water bodies. So it really shattered the lake shore capacity model with respect to its premise. That is, the hypothesis that nutrients would get to the lake just didn't happen. Now, to contrast that with the limestone basis of Southern Ontario, the model still works because in a non-mineralized soil condition, such as limestone, it still gets to the adjoining water body. So it was only found that this conclusion was that the Dillon model just simply didn't work in the Canadian Shield. Now, the next slide came to a very interesting typical provincial dilemma. Even though the model was really no longer useful, the province, through its representatives, they wanted to continue to apply the principles of the Dillon model, and they would refuse to let it die a natural death. And what they did do about 13 years ago, they put all of this material into a handbook so that it wasn't a waste of a quarter of a century of their position. And that was the Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook, but it was relegated to a tool, and they would not let go. The reality is, when the tool and the science was challenged, the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Natural Resources never won. They always lost, but they wouldn't change provincial policy. Sort of a typical resistance to a new revelation. So where does that leave us? And we know that probably more important than ever are our lake and neighborhoods and lake environments. So it's still a very important planning challenge to create what we would like to see happen on our water bodies, but the notion that development deteriorates the water quality aesthetically is just not there. What we found is that a lot of lake associations go into what are called lake plans, and they're normally sponsored by the residents around the lake, and they tend to concentrate on things that are outside zoning and official plan policy, because let's face it, the official plan and the zoning bylaws do that. And they look at important things like the history, the culture, the public aspects of the lake, attitudes and values. And they actually in turn provide a very important component of a program going forward. But what is ultimately necessary now is a new approach to lake planning. And on the next slide, it talks about the importance of other things other than the Dillon model, which is really not going to do much for the protection or the maintenance of the lake neighborhoods. It probably makes policy for a lake more important than ever, because it's something that comes from the grassroots up. And what you have to concentrate on are things like the biology, the physical nature, the social aspects, economic and environmental parameters. They all become important, but they still remain somewhat subjective. And so it's the policy framework that you end up with that is going to put your lake into the next century, so to speak. So I see it as on the next slide. You don't throw the baby out with the bath water. You preserve the positive things, and in my belief, the municipality of Whitestone had come up with a fairly high quality standard, generally speaking, to begin with. So I would not avoid using those quality standards that it adopted in the first go around, if I can call it that. So what we're looking at in this biophysical world of lake planning are things like protecting habitat, ensuring physical suitability, and look at compatibility. So this last slide shows what you have to integrate into your lake planning exercise going forward. You can see, if you can envisage a circle or a balloon around all of these at an intersection point, those all become the integral parts of what your new lake planning exercise should look like. And that is a combination of the biophysical, the land use that's there, and certainly go back to the agencies. They still will have value added. Some of it was erroneous. They don't want to really admit that, but you will get whatever quality you can out of that. And perhaps no less, and perhaps most critical, is do a very extensive public input exercise with things like open houses, surveys, and as many meetings as it takes. So we're in a new world. It's not going to be my world, Council, but I wish you well. I think with this approach, you should have a rock solid future for Whitestone's water bodies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John, for your presentation. I'll open the floor to questions for councilors for a few minutes. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you. I just have one question. John, anywhere in our official plan or zoning bylaw, is the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook mentioned?
Yes.
So when we do our official plan, based on what you're telling us today, would you be recommending that we take any reference to that out of our official plan or keep it in, or what would your recommendation be?
Well, it's part of history. It does have, I think, this erroneous kind of aspect to it. I don't think it's going to add value to the to referencing it. I mean, I think if you talk to someone very high up at the ministry that's in charge of that, which I gather now would be MECP, they would say, yes, we recognize we need to go a different way. So I think, to answer your question most directly, I don't think it's relevant any longer.
So in your opinion, it should come out, reference to it.
Yeah, I think most planners would agree with that.
Thank you.
Councillor Nash.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. John, thank you for the presentation. That was, I thought, brought some insight for everybody. One question I have is, I know we're talking about, the 2010 assessment, I'll call it, book, Lakeshore Capacity Handbook, but that wasn't talking about the recreational carrying capacity, right? This was more a report that spoke to the phosphorus levels. It wasn't about the recreational carrying capacities, correct?
It spoke more about nutrients, correct? Okay.
And by getting, like, I know you used some numbers on some lakes as an example. And in the old report, it spoke to 300 meters back, and it spoke to the phosphorus going into the lake, whereas the new report is now saying a lot of that phosphorus is actually caught up just outside the leaching bed of the septic tanks, or just below it or in it. And based on that, on some lakes that used to be, I'll call it frozen for lack of a better word, by not using this Lakeshore Capacity Handbook anymore, is actually therefore saying that additional development can occur on lakes. It's not reducing the number, it's actually increasing the numbers in this area, not in Southern Ontario where it's limestone. Am I correct?
It is, but if you use those kind of 4 planning bubbles, I'll call them, you could come to the conclusion that a good policy for a lake is a very restrictive one as far as additional development is concerned. It may not be the sort of black and white science, but if it was thought that because there was the certain elements of the planning program going forward, that a lake is seriously over populated because of density and how it's used and what is available in terms of additional land and how much habitats on it, you could conclude that there would be lakes that were at capacity.
Yeah, perfect. So, and I think that's why I noted, the recreational carrying capacity, right? Just because we're saying that from a lakeshore capacity handbook, you might be able to do X amount of development on a lake. That's only one item out of the land use data, whereas the recreational carrying capacity or the density might say you can do much less, right? So basically that handbook was only one aspect of the lake plan, right?
It could, keep in mind that recreational capacity is very subjective. It does not, there is no simple formula that is black and white when it comes to planning. It's just full of grays. I mean, we did extensive recreational capacity for Manitowoc, for McKellar, and the conclusion that ultimately was determined was that if it's too busy on a lake to go out skiing or boating, you just don't go. Or that they felt that there was really no science to it. And those things are swingy. I mean, it depends on the price of gas. It depends on the level of travel or water access properties. So those types of data have to be considered, but don't ever take them as gospel because they can't be gospel.
Okay, thank you very much, John. And my very last question, and I'm going to put you on the spot and you might not be able to answer it, but if you could pick a lake in Whitestone, I'll use the lake that is right by Town Hall here, Whitestone. Would you have any ideas to an estimate of what an updated lake, like a lake planning report for a lake like that might cost us? And you could be off by 100%. I'm just curious to know what you might think a detailed report for a lake in the municipality of Whitestone might cost, just for an individual one, or if you have one from another municipality that maybe you could use as an example.
Well, I think a lot of it would depend upon the issues, the size of the lake. Did you participate on your lake in their lake planning exercise? Would you have known, for example, Gooseneck Lake's lake planning budget?
I believe it was it was $8,000 or $10,000, somewhere in there. But I know it wasn't a full, well, anyways, I think it was $8,000 to $10,000 for that lake.
Okay, to me, that sounds fairly reasonable. So for something that's 3 or 4 times the size, if you just did a straightforward math exercise, it would be 3 or 4 times the cost.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Again, thank you for the report. I think just the way you put together with some just quick notes, I think helps everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments for councilors?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
Yes, Councilor Woods, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. John, first of all, thanks for the presentation. That was enjoyable. On the one eutrophic system, I'm looking at the slide here. You said that Limestone, Fairholme, Lorimer, and Wawashkesh would be level 1, correct?
Right. Yes.
And then Whitestone and most of the other lakes, I guess we have in the municipality would be level 2 mesotrophic.
Yes.
Would there be anything real high in the mesotrophic that you would know about any of our lakes, or, into eutrophic? Do we have any eutrophic lakes in the municipality?
I think some of the smaller ones would be. They tend to have more natural nutrient impacts from, keeping in mind, nutrients come from natural sources, both through wetlands and atmosphere. They probably account for 80% of the existing nutrients in a lake, whereas the development, which was once assumed to be 100% impactful in terms of added nutrients, which no longer is, in fact, the correct understanding, was about 20%. So if you have a small water body that has a lot of wetland around it, I'm going to guess it's going to be over 18.5 micrograms per liter.
Okay. Thanks, John. That's all.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, just have one more.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So John, like Lorimer Lake, right, supports lake trout. And they're in level 1. If they became level 2, would the lake trout die or something in there?
Well, that again is not an exact science. And what happens in lake trout lakes, and that is an interesting circumstance because there are such limited oligotrophic lakes or high quality lakes that support lake trout. The province has relegated those to provincial interest. So the province has an extreme interest in maintaining lake trout lakes, of which Lorimer Lake is one. Now, Lorimer Lake does not naturally produce lake trout because it has no habitat ability for the eggs to be laid in a proper habitat. Lake trout lay their eggs in late October and November in heavy, rubbly kind of sort of football-sized boulders that have to exist. That doesn't occur on Lorimer Lake, but it does sustain a lake trout population, but only through actually putting yearlings or fingerlings into the water body. And I think the lake's right on the bubble of that sort of 9.9 or 10. What happens on some lakes is that the band of concentrated dissolved oxygen, which is also important to the, I guess, the preservation or the maintenance of lake trout. If you can imagine it squishing in the late summer season, the lake trout have to get oxygen to sustain themselves. And that band of oxygen in some of my research has shown to almost deplete to zero for Lorimer Lake. So it's not so much the nutrients as it is the loss of oxygen, because that band narrows up, the fish have to all stay at one level of the lake and they become susceptible to predators because they're gonna be found at that level. Now the province, through the Ministry of Natural Resources, has said that 7 parts per million of dissolved concentrated oxygen is the requirement for sustaining lake trout. Although there's no science to back that up, they just picked that number. But again, if we go back to the fact that development doesn't deteriorate the water quality, which is more nutrients, more phosphorus, it's not going to impact that anyway. I think it's more sort of the subjective understanding of the science of the fishery. And it's nice to have that sport fish in a water body, because it not only means that you've got excellent water quality conditions, you have an opportunity for a better fishery or a different fishery. So, but again, the model has made these wrong assumptions. So you got to turn, in my mind, to other parameters that are not based on what we found as false science.
Thank you.
Okay. I was just going to comment. We have 2 folks from the Lorimer Lake Association, I notice, are on the call and have their hands up. So we could take questions. Please make them questions and please make them brief if you don't mind. who wants to go first? Cecilia
It-
Parks or Gary or?
It's Gary. I'll go
Okay, Gary,
first.
Go
And
ahead.
yeah, and
Gary
actually, my initial notes here was that I wanted to say that the Lorimer Lake Association was supportive of the lake planning initiative, and that that the association isn't against development. We're for controlled development. And those were the things I wanted to say, but the conversation kind of changed a little bit as the counselors asked the questions. I hope that when council, before they come to any conclusions or thoughts, that they invite experts like Hutchison's in, because there's many factors that that control a lake at capacity, and besides phosphorus. And to John's point, dissolved oxygen is key. And in the September, when we do take the measurements, and I presented this to council before, the McDougall side of the lake actually loses all the life supportable dissolved oxygen on the McDougall side of the lake, and there's some in the Whitestone and in the larger basin there. So dissolved oxygen and things that impact it are key. But I just want to just point out one thing that I think would stand out the most. There's a lot of things I want to say, but I'll just say one thing, is that I believe Whitestone Lake and Manitowoc Lake, both in the past 5 years, has had blue-green algae. Blue-green algae is a result of warming lakes and is a result of man-made inputs into that lake, fertilizers, chemicals, and it's generally associated, and I think it's pretty well accepted that the lakes are overdeveloped. So when you see blue-green algae on a lake, I personally feel that's a planning error. That's a planning failure. So development does have an impact on lakes, and it does have an impact on algae, and algae does have an impact on dissolved oxygen. But besides that, there's a whole bunch of other factors that development has for lakes, and I'll let the Hutchisons and the professionals of the world tell you that, but there are numerous. And anyways, but the other thing I was going to say initially is that the Lorimer Lake Association, as I said, is supportive of this initiative. And if there needs to be a lake that volunteers time to gather scientific data or whatever's needed, we would be more than happy to volunteer and to participate with the planning. But please listen to the professionals like Hutchison and let that be the guide to your planning. And one last thing, when you do decide what your planning initiative is, your goal or objective of that planning initiative is important, because it will help determine the outcome. And I don't know if Cecilia has anything else she wants to say.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you. I will keep it brief. I really appreciate the time for both Gary and I to say a few words. And thank you very much, Mr. Jackson, for your presentation. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to reiterate. It's Brent Parsons, who's the senior aquatic scientist at Hutchison's Environmental, who Gary was speaking about, and who is actually very interested in making a presentation to council, to Whitestone, regarding the many other factors, like Mr. Jackson had mentioned, the biological, the social, the economic, and the environmental factors that can really affect lake quality. And he actually was quite interesting in the fact that he told me in an email that a lake study would only perhaps take about 1.5 years. And also very interesting to note is that many of the lakes in our area have already been studied. We have documented a lot of the important information regarding phosphorus and all the other specific nutrients, et cetera, in the lake that are important to look at. And therefore, the cost involved in doing a lake study might not be as high as the one that we used here as an example. So I think it would be really important to ask Mr. Brent Parsons for some of his ideas in terms of costs. And yeah, using the existing numbers could be very important. One other very important factor that Brent did mention was if the municipalities do revamp their official plans, it's really important because we have not had the time yet to do these lake studies to put aside certain lakes. For example, the Lake Trout Lakes. So perhaps if you do decide, yes, the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook might not be the handbook that we should follow at this point in time. He was very strong in his thoughts of saying that we should put aside certain lakes, though, in order to protect them until we actually get all the data that we need. Would you agree with that, Mr.? That would be a good idea?
I think you want to go through a planning exercise on a lake to reconsider policy. You should wait till that exercise is done. That makes sense.
Mhm. Great, yeah. Before we change things like, for example, Lorimer Lake and some other lakes do have the Lakeshore Capacity Handbook at present, which does, which is required in order for people to, for example, sever or to develop, which they do have to show that it meets certain requirements. But until we replace that, I think it's really important that we have some sort of concrete data available in terms of the lake planning and the studies, the lake studies. So that was one other
Yeah,
point
well,
I just wanted
thanks,
to talk about.
Thanks, folks, for your comments.
Thank you for
I think
for
that
allowing
council will
us.
have to have further discussion about how we want to proceed with this at another meeting. But clearly the official plan does contain lake-specific sections in it and will continue to, I assume. Lake plans need to be done as part of they need to be reviewed as part of the planning exercise, at least the way I see it. So I think we'll get there. But anyway, I think we should, in the interest of time, we should move on for today. And I'm going to withhold I have quite a few comments about what's been discussed, but I'm going to withhold them until we have another pass at this later on and figure out how we're going to proceed. The only other thing I would say is that hopefully we will be able to engage the representatives of the various lake associations and some volunteers to help with assembling some of the necessary data in order to keep the cost of the exercise manageable. So anyway, thanks everybody for your participation and time. Thank you, John, for your presentation and for answering questions. I'm going to move on to the next item if we can. And we're still in committee of the whole. We have one more planning item. I'm going to stop sharing this presentation first. And okay, so we're back to our regular screen here. The next application is a consent application related. We have discussed this one before a couple of times. And there is a further memo, I believe, from our planning assistant on this. So Paul, are you going to introduce this one or? Yes, go ahead.
So at the council meeting of July 18th, the consent agreement between the municipality and a number company 1569329 Ontario Inc., which is Robert Duda, was discussed. At that time, Robert Duda requested that the environmental report be removed from the consent agreement. Council passed a resolution to defer the matter. So this is the background in regards to the inclusion of the environmental report. The draft consent agreement was prepared on or about June 26th. It was reviewed and amended and also signed by Mr. Aduda. That consent agreement included parts 2, clauses 2, 10, 11, and part 2 including the environmental report. The draft consent agreement was also approved by Mr. Duda's lawyers, Lisa Lund and Andy Margaritas. So the matter came back to council on July 18th. Mr. Duda requested that the environmental report be removed from the consent agreement along with clauses 10 and 11.
210.
So the consent agreement that is in the package here reflects what Mr. Duda requested, am I correct?
Attachment 1 is what Mr. Duda signed on July 10th. Mr. Duda emailed a revised consent agreement, which is attachment 2, which is page 75. And he's requesting to delete 2, 10, and 11.
I don't think 11, Paul. I think it's just 10 and.
Oh, sorry, 10. There was
So-
discussion about
Hmm.
number 11. Sorry
So-
about that.
So essentially, what we're being asked to do today is to decide which of these two, whether the original one stands or the
Correct.
requested modification stand. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. And are there questions or comments from councilors?
I would.
Councillor
through-
Nash, go
yeah,
ahead.
I would through you, Mr. Mayor. I know the last time this was spoken about, my signal was not the best, so again, I apologize for that a few weeks back. I guess a couple questions I have. It would appear that the applicant had at one time signed the original agreement, which was Appendix A, if I believe. Then for whatever reason, I know when he'd spoken about it at the last council meeting, what we saw to defer it was he was going to come back with a revised red line, I'll call it, which is attachment 2. And what I see is basically it's taking out the environmental impact study reference. It said this is what the consent agreement was based upon. It's not saying he had to adhere to it. And I understand in reading all the documentation that item 10, which was noted to come out in a red line, was as a result of not needing some of the easements. That's all. So because he didn't need the easements, he therefore didn't need item number 10 to be in. So I would follow that, and from what I can see here, I'd be in support of going with the red line. Sorry for the page flipping. The updated red line attachment 2. But it's just more of the last thing, it's just more of a really small general note, I think, that we need to be careful of as a municipality. And I know we're including on page 1 of 2 of the report, we're including an email transmission between the applicant and our planning assistant, and they've copied a couple lawyers in it. And I think we have to be cognizant when we're doing that, is just to make sure to redact email addresses and stuff of private individuals, instead of publishing email addresses of people just going forward. I know we do it sometimes, but I think we just need to make sure we're trying to do it on a number of items. So those are my 2 comments, and thank you for my time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, at this point, I guess we're just receiving this and we'll deal with the consent agreement at a later time when we'll actually vote on it. Is that correct?
Well, that's right, yeah, but later on, there's a bylaw too, right? The bylaw?
Yeah, so
Yes,
when, if, and I spoke to this, I think in detail the last meeting, I don't want to kind of go through the same thing, but briefly, the environmental report was really a pretty benign report, as I recall. And the environmental agreement was only referenced when Mr. Duda did not think that he had rights off, I think it was Gibson Bay Road, to his lots. So he suggested an easement, and that's when the environmental condition sort of came in. Then he subsequently found out that he did not need those easements because he had some sort of access deeded, I would say, over Gibson Bay Road. So he wanted to return to the original sort of thought, and I'm kind of in agreement with him. So I don't know when we'll vote on that. So,
all right.
but when we do, I'll be voting in favor of the amended attachment 2 with section 2 and 10, I think, taken out. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or comments from councilors? Councilor Bray or Councilor Woods? Okay, if not, I think we and then retire from committee of the whole. Oh, sorry. Oh, this motion is from matters rising. Yeah, so we could retire from committee of the whole if someone would like to move that we reconvene into a regular session. That's moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Bray. I'll ask the clerk to determine those in favor, please.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods, Councillor Woods,
You there?
He's unmuted,
Hello?
but we can't hear him.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
thank you. That motion carries at 5:38 PM.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so just under matter arising, can I get a mover and seconder, please, that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receive for information the presentation from John Jackson, planner, entitled Lakeshore Development Model 1975, the Dillon model. There a mover and seconder. Councillor Bray moves, seconded by Councillor Nash. All those in favor of this motion?
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods, Councillor Woods,
Yes.
thank you. Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
thank you. That motion carries.
And next, with respect to item 6.2, that the council of the municipality receives for information the memorandum from Paula Macri, planning assistant, dated August 1st, 2023. Update from July 18th, 2023, council meeting. Need a mover and seconder for that one. Councillor Lamb moves, seconded by Councillor Nash. Again, all those in favor, please.
Excuse me, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
The motion carries.
I know it carries, but again, when do we get to talk about which version we're gonna pass
Yeah.
when we get
Yeah.
later on? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
We're coming to it.
Yeah, thank you.
So the next item is on the agenda is item 8, which is a consent agenda. Um. So, whereas the council of the municipality of Whitestone has received the consent agenda consisting of council and committee meetings, the following ones, the special council meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 11th, 2023. The regular council meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. The Whitestone Library and Technology Center minutes for Monday, July 19th, 2023, and the unfinished business listed on page 4. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the municipality of Whitestone does hereby approve the following. The special council meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 11th, 2023, and the regular council meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. And that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receives for information the Whitestone Library and Technology Center minutes for Monday, July 19th, 2023. And that the council of the municipality of the municipality of Whitestone receives for information the unfinished business listing contained in the consent agenda dated August 1st, 2023. Who would like to move that? That's full. Okay, Councillor Lamb moves, seconded by Councillor Nash. Any discussion? 1 minute.
I have one, one really quick question if I could. It's not to do with the minutes, it's just to do with the are we doing unfinished business now, Mr. Mayor? We are, right?
I'm sorry, what?
Are we also approving the unfinished business?
Yes.
Right.
Well, I guess we're receiving it. I don't think we're not really approving it. We're just,
So
it's being received for information.
So the only comment I had, just when I was reviewing it, I didn't have a time before the last meeting. I'm just trying to find where it was here. On page 5 of 7. It's the only it's the one regarding the boat launch and lake access points. I noticed that we'd sent notices out to, it says Bolger Lake, Cachagama and Whites Lake residents and the Magneto One Pioneers Association or Washkesh Conservation Association. I was just wondering if there's any other lake associations out there that maybe we should notify them as well, that they can put it through to their members. I know a lot of people will be having their meetings upcoming. I didn't know if that might be possible. That's all. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I'll ask the clerk to comment.
Excuse me, yes, we can, the lake associations, we have contacts where we can send it to them.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? Okay, let's call the question.
Excuse me,
Thank you,
Councillor
Madam
Gray,
Clerk.
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
I abstain.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
that motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next up is accounts payable, item number 9.1. Need a mover and seconder that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receive for information the accounts payable listing in the amount of $77,391.80 for the period ending July 26, 2023. Mover and seconder. So I saw Councillor Bray moves and Councillor Lamb seconds. Any discussion on payables?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple. On the first page, hall construction, nursing station, 29,000. What is that for the parking lot or something up there? Or what is that for?
Yes, that is for the parking lot work that they did. And we held back money because we weren't happy with the quality of the work. They still have to come back and do some work. But because of our funding because of the final date of our funding, which we have since actually extended, we didn't realize we could. We have run the payment through. But it's on hold until Halls can get here.
So it's the nursing station and Church Street here? Did they do
Yes.
the paving on
Yes.
Church Street?
Yes, they did.
And and I know we had held back or we're having some sort of issue. Is that issue taken care of, whatever it was?
It hasn't been taken care of yet, but they're going to come and do an overlay. They're going to do a scratch coat overlay. And
On Church Street?
on Church Street and part of the nurse station parking lot.
Okay, thank you. My only other question is, on page 110 of 152, WS Morgan Construction, again, this is the nurses station, 10,500. Is that kind of the final payment? Aren't they done up there or?
They are just about done, the doors in. There was a little bit of work to do and I believe that's the final payment. I'd have to double check. There might be a very small holdback yet, but they're it's substantially complete their work.
And then at some point, we can get just a 2-paragraph thing to council saying here's the final tally and all that kind of stuff.
Sure, we can do that in September when all
Or
the
just an email or something, just, I'd like to know what the final tally is.
final cost was. Okay, very good. We're still doing landscaping there, which is work that we're doing and the parking area in the back. We did get a price from Morgan on that work, but it was too high, so we decided to do it in-house.
Oh, good.
So
Good.
we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nash.
I had one quick question, but just at the end there, Michelle. The work that we're doing ourselves, will we be able to get reimbursed our internal costs for that through the grant program?
Not salaries, but materials. Yeah.
Perfect, good. And just the very last item on page 110 of 152, it says yard voids, roadside grass cutting. Are they done all the grass cutting we're gonna do, or do we do another round in the fall? Just more curiosity.
To your first question, I'm not sure if they're done. I suspect they are, but I haven't asked the public works manager about that. But the answer is no, we typically don't do a second round unless we have a real problem with growth and sight lines.
Perfect. I noticed on the bunny trail that they'd not missed, but they'd stopped where there was some
Milkweed.
milkweed, which is good. I know that's what they're supposed to do. So I did notice that, which is good.
It just, as a follow-up on that, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think they did a pretty good job on the milkweed. And for some reason, I've been rambling around the municipality the last couple of weeks and, you're not going to hit every spot, but they did a pretty good job of stopping and letting the milkweed sort of thrive so the monarch butterfly can. So I know there's a tendency sometimes if there's, 2 plants that are cut down by mistake, that everyone gets riled up or something. But 99% is a pretty good number or whatever they've done. I think they've done a pretty good job. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Let's call the question then, please.
All right, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes,
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Next is item 11.1, which is the bylaw related to the agreement for conditions of consent approval, Mr. Duda's application. So I'll read the motion and ask for a mover and seconder. That bylaw number 49-2023 being a bylaw to enter into an agreement for conditions of approval of consent P53/2022 W be read a first and second time this first day of August 2023 and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this first day of August 2023 and numbered bylaw number 49-2023. And I guess before we get the mover and seconder, we we need to specify which attachment we're talking about, and we're actually talking about attachment number 2, I believe, if that's. I'm assuming that that's what,
Yeah,
what
was it,
what our mover and seconder.
was it 2 or A or B?
Hmm?
Was it number 2 or was it B? I'll let.
I think it was number 2, but.
Okay.
Attachment 2,
Attachment 2?
attachment 2.
Yeah, thank you.
Is the marked up one.
The one,
Yeah.
yes, the one with the red line. So, I need a mover and seconder. Counselor Lamb moves, Counselor Nash seconds. It's on the floor. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm not hearing any. Let's call the question, please.
Thank you. That was Counselor Nash and Counselor Lamb. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you.
I think I moved it and Counselor Nash seconded or
Yeah, Counselor Lamb moved and Counselor Nash seconded. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb.
yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
And we have the second one, which is a bylaw to authorize the acceptance of title of part of lot 26, concession 6 in the geographic township of Hagerman. The applicants are Jennings and Greenwood. And we've seen this one before too, right? So this is motion looking for is as follows, that bylaw number 52-2023 being a bylaw to authorize the acceptance of title of part of lot 26, concession 6 in the geographic township of Hagerman, now in the municipality of Whitestone, designated as part 5 on plan 42R-22120. And the associated PIN is 52089-0390. And to dedicate and assume the said portion of public highway known as a portion of Balsam Road into the municipality of Whitestone municipal road system for year-round maintenance. That bylaw be read a first and second time this first day of August 2023, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this first day of August 2023 and numbered 52-2023. I need a mover and seconder for that one. Counselor Bray moves. Counselor Lamb seconds. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I think we can call the question.
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. So. So this brings us to item B, item 12. Which is a request from Legion Branch 394. And you don't have to leave. You want to? Okay. I was reflecting on this matter at the beginning of the meeting because Councillor Bray had declared a conflict of interest and is recusing herself. When I looked at this initially, I am a member of the Legion, so and have been for a while. So I'm not sure, to be honest, I didn't get any advice from I'm not an officer or anything like that, but I think what I'll do under the circumstances, Madam Clerk, is I will declare a conflict and I will recuse myself from this. So I won't speak to the motion. Do you want to take the chair, Councillor Lamb? Yeah, go ahead if you.
I can do it from.
Well, you can.
I can do it from.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary for me to leave or anything, but I'm not I'm not going to speak to the
I
motion.
needed to, I think you're fine to.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, any, has it been, has the motion been read? Or
No.
not? Okay, let me get it here. Okay, I need a mover and seconder for Legion Branch, 394 Magneto Dunchurch, request for temporary outdoor physical extension, temporary patio dated July 12th, 2023 per amended regulations 746/21 under the Liquor License and Control Act 2019. That the Council and Municipality of Whitestone approves the request from the Legion Branch 392 Magnetawan Dunchurch located at 2130 Balsam Road for a temporary outdoor physical extension, brackets temporary patio per the sketch attached, here to attached. That the approval is issued for the time frame from August the 1st, 2023 to September the 30th, 2023, and that the following conditions will apply to the above referenced approval. Number one, Legion Branch 392 Magnetawan Dunchurch shall provide the municipality of Whitestone proof of notification to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, in brackets AGCO, and the brackets prior to the setting up of the temporary patio per amended regulation 746/21 under the Liquor License and Control Act 219, and number two, no liquor shall be served or permitted, outside of the delineated temporary patio area. Do I need a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Nash moves.
I'll second that.
Councillor Woods seconds it. Is there any discussion?
I had a question if I could, through you, Deputy Mayor. Do we know, like, obviously I see the sketch and they're doing some picnic tables. Is there a big event happening? Maybe I'm just wondering if there's if we know what the purpose is, if there is like a.
I can probably answer that. They have events throughout the year. They have a pig roast and a fish fry and a number of things that are outside. I guess in the past, they haven't been able to serve liquor outside. It's just been inside. So I think this would set up a patio area where they can serve liquor. So, but they have every month things. And during the week they have things. So maybe they want to use the patio for euchre or something. I don't know. So, but it makes sense. We have a number of these and obviously in all cities now, and they're pretty successful. So anyway. Any other comments or questions? If not, we'll call the question.
Thank you. Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Lamb.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
And I'll hand the chair back to the mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should, here, I'll do it.
Oh, I'm supposed to text her, but if
Oh, you want to text?
maybe Paula could walk over and let
Just
Councillor
let
Bray.
Councillor Bray know that we're finished with this item. Thank you.
That was the prearranged. But I forgot about it.
So the next item is item 12.2. I'm gonna wait till Councillor Bray returns.
Yes, my own body. Oh, yeah, that's for just what I did.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gray has returned, so we'll resume. And again, item 12.2 is a report which is in the package from Debbie Zulak, who is our representative on the board of the Belvedere Heights home in Prairie Sound. So could I get a mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone receive for information the Belvedere Board of Management update from Debbie Zulak, who is representative for the Township of McKellar, the Township of McMurray Monteith, and the Municipality of Whitestone, known as Area 4, dated July 23rd, 2023. Mover and seconder. Councillor Gray moves. Thank you. A seconder, Councillor Lamb. Any discussion about this report?
Yeah, through you.
Councillor
Mr.
Lamb.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I get what they're doing. They've been here. They were with us enclosed and then they were here in open on the life leases. If I'm not mistaken, I think our percentage of all this is about 6%. Is that correct, Madam CEO?
I would say you're very close. I think it's about 6.1, but in that, certainly in that vicinity.
So of $4 million, this is potentially a liability of $240,000, right? So it's not chump change, right? I guess they don't need permission from the municipalities to do this, is my first question. They can just do it, or 4 or 7 or 6 or 10 or whatever millions they want. And what I'm getting at is they haven't even got approval that this campus of care is going to take place. So, I know it's again, I'm not trying to downplay the hard work that they do and whatever, but we're going to buy them all out. And what happens if there's no campus of care? Like what happens if the province or a new government says, no, we don't have that money. We can't commit to that. We're now going to end up with big liability. And I don't, that's the disconnect that I have. So I don't know who, Debbie isn't on or Councillor Zulak isn't on the call. I don't want to have them call back again and all that kind of stuff. So but I'd like those answered. Or do they need permission for it to encumber us 240,000? Because that's what this is, right? It's really saying, yeah, we're working on it. And if for some reason the bank calls the loan, you're going to owe us up to 240. It may not be 240. It might be 190 at that point, or 100 or whatever, right? So those are my questions, I guess. We're just receiving this for information, so we're not approving it. But anyway, can who's going to shed light on that? Or can we ask that of Debbie or of the committee or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've made note of your question, and I think that's a good question. I do understand at the next CAO meeting, which is not till September, that the Belvedere Board of Management folks, I think will include Debbie, is going to make a presentation to the CAOs and have even further information on this. I think they're just partway down the path. So that's information I'll bring back to council once I hear it, or I'll ask them if they do need to come back to council with more information.
And at that meeting, could you, if you're at a meeting,
I will be,
could
yeah.
you reaffirm what they told us when they came out? Because I was questioning them, that if the campus of care goes forward and then the land is subsequently sold, that the first thing that would be paid off obviously would be this loan if it hadn't been called by that point. And then secondly, I think they said that night that the proceeds from that would then flow back to the municipalities, is what they said. I was surprised they kind of said that, but that's what Art Coles or one of them said. So could you confirm that also with them again?
I will. In
Because
fact,
it's on you, it's on record here.
It is.
And you could listen to the tape, so.
I actually think through you, Mr. Mayor, I think those are two questions that could certainly be answered before September. And I'll make a note in the minutes that I'm going to follow up on.
Yeah,
on that.
I'm almost sure that Belvedere Heights is, or, the board isn't just, if they needed permission, they probably would be asking for permission or a motion or something, right? I'm sure they can just do this under whatever documents they have, but, I'd also like to know how all the other I assume all the other counselors or all the other councils in the area are getting this same sort of email, or is this just Debbie keeping us informed? Right?
Well, I think, I think.
In what
if I-
capacity is
yeah.
she sending this, I guess is my.
First of all, it's my understanding from previous discussions that I was party to that, in fact, they would need the approval of the municipalities to take out a loan. Now, they do have the ability to levy municipalities for costs that they incur. But I think borrowing would require the owners, the municipalities to of any material amount. I mean, now they may be able to get a line of credit based on their operating profile, in which case that they would not need approval.
But yet, Mr. Mayor, she says in here, I ask if all 8 municipalities had to agree for the loan. They do not. That's what she.
Well, yeah, and so, I mean, I think that's going to come, the answer to your the whole of your question will come out of this meeting that the CAO just referred to. I don't think it's not like all the other municipalities said okay and they just want us to say okay. The other people are asking similar questions to the ones you are, and so
It's funny that wouldn't have just come from the Belvedere board or something, right? As opposed to an email from Debbie, I guess, or Counselor Sulak.
well, I think she's maybe just trying to keep us informed, as you suggest, that these discussions are going on, but
It's just a strange way of approaching the whole thing, right? And when it involves 240,000, I mean, again, I think we have to do our due diligence. Because if we had to pay that, that's an enormous hit, obviously, on us. And it just hits me the way Belvedere does things is awkward. Is the only word that I can come up with. And again, I'm not trying to be too detrimental to the people they work for, volunteers, I think, but they're changing all the time what they're doing and how they're going. And anyway, I'd like to also know why they got turned down by the Bank of Nova Scotia. What's there? Must have had a reason for it, right?
yeah.
And what is the
I don't
reason, right?
know the answer to that. But-
Well, maybe they know something we don't. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, are there any other questions or comments about this? We did have the motion. The motion's on the floor, right?
It's on the floor. Yes, we have a mover.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then I will ask the clerk to call the question.
Thank you, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
yes,
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the one more in item 12 is a resolution from the Township of Selwyn in regard to short-term rentals. We discussed this and it was in correspondence at a previous meeting. And we now have a motion in front of us as follows, that a letter of support for the above, the first part is that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone supports the Township of Selwyn's resolution number 2023-143 entitled Notice of Motion Short-Term Rentals, and that a letter of support for the above referenced resolution be sent to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, the local MPP Graydon Smith, and MP Scott Aitchison. Moved by Councillor Bray, seconded by Councillor Nash. Any discussion on this one? Okay, I think we can call a question on that.
Well, yeah, I just have.
Oh,
have-
sorry.
Have a comment. Our short-term rental discussion is coming up.
Yeah.
Very soon, like in, I don't know, September, October, we're gonna be dealing with the whole issue of short-term rentals. And although we do have a bylaw now that supports short-term rentals with licenses and that sort of thing, we don't know how the discussion on short-term rentals is going to end up, right? It could be anywhere from we're going to allow them to we're not going to allow them, right? And so my only question is, this isn't a hill to die on, but are we getting ahead of ourselves? Is this something that if it came up after we redo it, we'd be in a better position to comment on this. And I realize the problems with Airbnb, but again, as council, we haven't had all this discussion, right? So my concern is that we're getting ahead of ourselves. Before our short-term rental bylaw discussions are coming up in the next, I would say, probably, well, Madam CAO, by October or something?
Yes, I would say so. I know that yourself and Mayor Comrie and I are meeting the week after next to look at sort of a preliminary bylaw. And then I'm sure there'll be changes and iterations, and it will come to council.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm saying late September, October.
Now, I see Council Bray has her hand up. I don't want anyone to think that somehow I'm against short-term rentals. I was part of being part of this when we first introduced it. We're part of, one of the earlier communities that did this. So I don't want to in any way, and I understand the problems with Airbnbs and short-term rentals. So, so it's not the subject that I'm arguing against. It's, well, it's what I said. So thank you anyway.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bray.
Yes, I think short-term rentals certainly have a place in our municipality, and I think that that's great that we have a new or a revised bylaw coming. I think what this speaks to really is a provincial look at it, whether we have short-term rentals or not, whether any municipality in the province has short-term rentals or not. This speaks to the province putting some regulations in place that short-term rental companies must abide by the municipal regulations that they have those places in. So if we have a municipal licensing process, then any short-term rental that is part of an Airbnb or VRBO or any other company like that, that they are required by law to follow our regulations. And if anyone doesn't follow those regulations, then they are delisted. And I think it just puts a little bit more accountability into the companies that run these. A lot, like not all of them are bad. Some of them are quite good and follow all the regulations within the municipality as an individual owner. But it's the companies that need to make sure that all of their properties are a part of whatever or whatever regulations are in the municipality. So I support this because I think whether we change our bylaw or whatever, that has nothing to do with this. This is just compelling the companies to follow our regulations, whatever they may be. And I really think that that's a good move for Ontario. Thank you.
Yeah, just in, through you, Mr. Mayor, just in response, it goes farther than that. It talks about collecting annual fees. Go and the fees be sent to the municipality and you know, they delist or remove, you know, this is a lot more than just, I mean, short-term rental companies or private individuals are obviously going to have to follow our short-term rental bylaw. They all do. That's kind of a given. So I'm just saying this goes beyond just, you know, it goes beyond what you said, I guess is what I'm saying. That's all. So, thank you.
Councillor Nash, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess when I see it, I guess in short terms, yeah, I don't think I'd want to support something right now until we've done our bylaw. And I look at this as an upper level government, a big brother taking a role away from us a little bit. So I'd be more into whatever we decide as a municipality that we would want to have enforced and not have the province come up with a whole bunch of standards and more red tape and paperwork for it. So I'd see it that maybe some of the ideas might be correcting whatever fees and stuff and enforcing it. But I think we need to start at the municipal level first and find out what we as a municipality want to allow and not allow and what our rules and regulations would be, and then find a way that we can enforce those ourselves over the province doing it for us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to support the motion, and the reason I'm going to support it is that the problem that we have had as a municipality, and if you talk to the other municipalities that have struggled with this in the past, the problem is identifying people who are doing it. And Councillor Lamb said earlier, well, they have to comply with our bylaw. They actually don't. The listing companies, like the ones that are mentioned here, don't. And individual people don't, if we can't find out about them, they don't have to comply with it either. Just been a classic problem. I mean, they're required to, but they don't. So, and I think numerous times people in this room have commented on the fact that there's lots of rentals going on that where people don't get the permits that are required under our current short-term rental bylaws. So, I mean, this is just asking the province to do some things to enable us. I'm sure they will. It'll take them a while to respond to this, and they won't do exactly what municipality of Selwyn is suggesting, but I think this would make our life easier if we at least, if there was some provincial regulation that said that that in order to list properties, you have to comply with your municipality and you know, give a little bit more teeth and you know, and make it easier for the municipalities to determine who's actually doing things. So anyway, that's my, I think, you know, unless we decided that we were just going to ban them outright, which others have tried and it doesn't seem to work. and I don't personally support that approach, but you know, in any case, I would say it's not going to impact what we put in our bylaw. But it's going to make our life easier if we decide to continue to permit them, which as I believe we will. So anyway, not to prolong this any further, I think Councillor Woods hasn't spoken. I don't know if you have any comments, Councillor Woods.
I think we've all, everybody said enough. I know short-term rentals are an issue. Our biggest problem's always been enforcement. And I don't know if this is gonna give us some sort of provincial backing for enforcement. I think it might be a good idea because it's gonna be an ever-increasing problem. And it'd be nice if everybody followed our bylaws, especially if we could lay some heavier fines. So if this is something that might help us out, it might be a good idea. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. If we're done with the discussion, Madam Clerk, you can call the question.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
No.
Counselor Nash,
No.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to correspondence. And we have 4 items. The OPP 2023 annual billing statement is there for everyone's information. There's a Town of Perry Sound motion regarding implementation of Bill 23. Aaron Shores municipality resolution regarding municipal codes of conduct and the Onan housing resolution. Does anyone wish to pull any of those on? Okay, so I need a mover and seconder that I'm sorry, I don't have the motion on this paper. I don't think, but it's that we received the that the Council of Municipality of Whitestone receives the correspondence from the August 1st council agenda with the following extracted for discussion, and there are none being extracted for discussion. So
I'll make the motion.
Councillor Lamb moves, seconder. Councillor Bray. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. We could,
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
and Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay, we are. Councillor items is next. Are there any councillor items? Councillor Lamb has.
Yeah, just quickly, just to remind everyone, there'll be lots out on Facebook and the radio and a bunch of other things. The library is having the book sale in here on Saturday and Sunday from, I think it's from 10 till 2. There's actually thousands of votes or books, I should say. So it's a good event. There is someone coming in to do a live painting. Mrs. LaRose, Brenda LaRose is coming, and she over the 2 days is going to do a painting that will be, I guess, auctioned off in some form at the end of the 2 days. I've mentioned several times that there's a dunk tank on both days. And we've got some volunteers. There's still some openings. If some family wants to dunk their grandfather or their father or something, I guess they can. So, but anyway, hopefully it'll be a good event. And I think this year, rather than asking a price for books, which is a lot of work, I think because we have the swipe system now that you can just swipe or donate or tap or that kind of stuff, I think that's the way it's going to work. So, and I think it's proven that you probably get more if you ask people to tap than you do if you ask them to give you 50 cents or something, right? So anyway, that's up this long weekend. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ray.
I have one question, and I just wondered whether we had any news on whether we were going to be having the fireworks coming up this year still.
Yeah.
So that was one, and the other one to go along with Councillor Lamb's information about the library event, which is quite it's quite a good event. That there's there are 2 other events going on. So I know that this area is going to have a lot of things going on because the Legion has their fish fry on Saturday, and the Knox United Church has their bake sale, their yard sale, and treasures. And so it's really great that we have all these things going on in our community, and for everybody to participate, especially on a long weekend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I was going to provide the answer to your first question regarding the fireworks. The Recreation Committee discussed this, and the current plan is to hold them on the Saturday evening of Labor Day, which is September 2nd, and failing that, if if it rains, the rain date would be Sunday, the 3rd of September. And our custodian of fireworks, which is Pete McEwen, is confirmed that he's available to do it those dates, and that will, hopefully we can escape, rain and firebans and other such things and get that happen. We will announce to people that is the plan going forward, and there may be a couple of other things that happen a little bit earlier, and for people who get there earlier in the evening. Say, fireworks don't usually go till about 10 o'clock, so we may have a little bit of a campfire type activity that our department had agreed to do on Canada Day, and it didn't happen because we closed up earlier. But anyway, we're looking at some of those things, but those are the tentative dates to answer your question. Any other?
Yeah, just one other quick one as I thought about. I know the big celebration in McKellar last week, is that their 150th?
Yes, it is.
I wonder if we might not think of having staff or someone draft a letter, on behalf of Whitestone Council, congratulating them on their 150th anniversary or whatever. Maybe even send it to the other communities, because maybe they've forgotten too. I don't know. But anyway, I'm more mainly concerned that we congratulate them. They're our next door neighbor.
Okay.
They contributed to our nurses station and other things, and we contributed our CAO for a while, so we're close, I guess. So anyway, I just maybe staff can just make up a letter or a short one and send it to them on behalf of council. So, or maybe we
Okay.
bring it back as a resolution. Would that be easier at the next meeting and just,
I'm fine with that direction. I think that would
Okay.
be a kind thing to do. So
Yeah.
I'll make note of that in
Yeah,
the
we could do that.
minutes.
thank you.
And I'll
Mm.
share the letter with council as
Sure,
well.
that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other council items? If not, are there questions from the public? I see we have 2 members of the public still on our call by the look of it. None in the room here, but. Okay, if not, then I will ask for a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw, please. Moved by Councillor Nash, seconded by Councillor Bray. The all in favor, our clerk will do. When she gets the paper for it.
I don't see one here, but
You-
we will,
You had to go through all those curfew.
I did. Well, we will,
No, I'm just kidding.
Paul is looking at me with a quizzical look, because I know she prepared these very nicely, but I will,
It's okay. It's a standard confirmatory bylaw. I
yeah,
don't,
okay, we will make do. Do we have a mover and seconder?
yeah, we do need a mover and seconder. Sorry, Councillor Nash moved. Yeah, and Councillor Bray seconded. I'm sorry. We do have a mover and seconder.
All right, thank you.
All of
Uh,
us in favor.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb. Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
and Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That's carried.
Okay, and the last one is adjournment. Whereas the business of this meeting is concluded, now therefore be it resolved that this meeting be adjourned at, and it looks like about 6:30 PM. Until the regular closed session meeting of Thursday, August 3rd, 2023 at 4 PM. That's or at the call of the chair, but I'm not gonna call one between now and Thursday, so. Moved by Councillor Lamb. Seconded by Councillor Bray.
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb, Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes,
Motion is carried.
thank you very much. Our meeting is adjourned and thank you to the folks who joined us on Zoom. Have a good rest of your evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.